I think we should start. The rest can. Morning, everybody. I'd like to give you a warm welcome to our session today on building a scalable API with Django REST framework. Kate Ratemo, and I'll partly be your host for today. So thank you for joining us. And before we start, I'd like to remind us that we should keep our mic muted throughout the session to minimize background noise, and feel I think we should start. The rest can. Morning, everybody. I'd like to give you a warm welcome to our session today on building a scalable API with Django REST framework. Kate Ratemo, and I'll partly be your host for today. So thank you for joining us. And before we start, I'd like to remind us that we should keep our mic muted throughout the session to minimize background noise, and feel free to use the chat box for any questions you guys might have during the presentation. And without further ado, I think I'll introduce our esteemed guest speaker, Billy Okeyo. He's a software engineer at Innova Limited, and he has a vast knowledge in software development in general. So we are honored. Billy, you're welcome, and thank you again.
Thank you for the welcome. So, as I've been told, I'm Billy Okeyo, currently a software engineer at Innova Limited. It's a fintech company. So mostly we focus on building custodian systems, fund management systems, investment systems, insurance systems. So anything related to capital markets, anything related to finance management. So that's what we do. A good example that I think most of you might have come across is the Mali app from Safaricom. So it runs on an engine developed by us. So I was also a student at Mount Kenya University. I finished, I think it was 2021 probably. I'm not so quite sure, but around that time, I was the pioneer lead of the GDSC in KU. So such an honor and a privilege to be able to share my knowledge with you guys. So to start it off, I didn't have quite much time to prepare, so we'll just go bit by bit because actually I haven't prepared anything, so I don't have a scenarios when you're working in a team. So let's say there's a back-end team and there's a front-end team. If you were to go the traditional way, you'd have to work hand in hand. So if, let's say, you're a back-end developer, you'll have to work hand in hand with the front-end developers. In a situation whereby you'd say that for this particular input, so this I'll consume it in the backend, then it will return this kind of data and such. But whenever you use an API approach, you really don't have to have that constant communication with the front-end developers or rather the front-end team. You just build the API, give them the endpoints, then they can do whatever they want with the front end. if at all they want to do it in, let's say, Angular, if they want to do it in React, if they want to do it in Vue, any framework they choose, it will work. So that's one advantage of having an API. So it will work with any front-end service that you give to it. So that is if you use the REST API. So there's also a difference. The most commonly approaches is the REST API, then there's the SOAP API. So the main difference is REST will be able to give you data back in JSON. SOAP will be able to give you that, but will be able to give you data in XML format. So JSON is the most advisable because any, let's say any language, any framework can interact with JSON well. So having that, now that you've had a concept of what an API is, so we are going to build an API. So in this particular scenario, we're going to use Django for it. So in building an API, you really have to consider 4 things. So the operations are the CRUD operations. That is create, read, update, and delete. Technically, those are the 4 main things that you need to consider when building your API. As long as you have those 4, you can say that API is good to go. So if at all there's other things needs to be done, so that's when now we start introducing concept of filters, such things. But the main thing is just to have the basic CRUD operations. So I take it that maybe some of you have already interacted with Django. So for those who have interacted with Django, it will be a walk in the park. For those who have not yet interacted with Django, I'll try to simplify things. And also, I know that those who have interacted with Django, but haven't interacted with the Django REST framework. So for that also, I'll explain bit by bit. So let me just share my screen. So it's a new folder. Let me to do API. Then I'll open the folder in VS Code. So I'm hoping font is visible. It's not too small. If there's a problem with it, someone can just comment in the chat section. So as a good approach, so whenever we are building any Django application, or rather any, let's say, just Python application per se, so it's a good practice to always have different virtual environments for all your projects. So what is a virtual environment? So a virtual environment is, as the word says, a virtual environment. So technically, it's an environment that can be able to install your project-specific libraries. So if I'm working on a Django app, let's say I can have, maybe I want to use probably Django, maybe so let's say 3.2, and I don't want to install the Django 3.2 globally in my machine. Let's say probably globally I have maybe 4.2 running. but I don't want to use 4.2 in this specific project. So for that, I'll use virtual environment. So I'll create a virtual environment. Then within that virtual environment, I'll create that specific version of Django that I want. In this case, maybe 3.2. So that helps you manage your libraries well, because for a specific project, you can have specific libraries. So that's what you're going to do. What I'll do is, for you to create virtual environments, you need a package called virtualenv. For me, I already have it installed. So to install this package, just have pip install virtualenv. So I won't run that because I already have it. And then after installing it, I'll just call virtualenv and then have .venv. So .venv is the name of my virtual environment. I like to use dot for my virtual environments, so that at least it can help me differentiate well between my project files and the virtual environment. So VNV just stands for virtual environment. So I'll execute that. It will create a folder called .venv. Then after that, now I need to activate this virtual environment so that I'm able to install packages within that virtual environment. So to do that, I'll write source.venv, which is the name of the virtual environment. Then scripts, then activate. So what I'm doing is I'm getting into the .venv environment. I'm getting into the scripts folder. Then I'm executing this activate file. So if you are on Linux, it might be a slightly different. So you'll have the .venv environment which you've created, but instead of scripts, you'll have a bin folder. So where I have scripts, you'll have bin, then activate. So after activating, if at all you're using the bash as your terminal, or rather something that's not CMD or PowerShell, you'll be able to see if the environment is selected. So in my case, I'll be able to see the .venv here. So that tells me that the environment is already activated. So once I have that now, I'll go ahead and install Django. So we'll give it a bit of time to install. Okay, so it's done installing. So after that, what I'll install next is a Django REST framework. So Django, it install Django REST framework. Okay, so once I have that, now I have everything that I need to start building my API. So once I have that now, whenever you want to start a new project in Django, so what we do is we have Django -admin start project. And then you give it the project name. In my case, I'll name it co. Then I'll add a full stop after that. So I'll show you the difference. So first, I'll just run it without the full stop. So you have Django admin, start project, then the name of the project. So in my case, co. So I'll run that. It will create a folder named co. Then within the folder, it will create another folder named co again. Then it will have my files. So for this, you can see that it has created 2 folders with the same name. So this is the project root folder. Then we have now the project folder. So this is not a good structure. So I'll delete this. Then run the same command, but introduce a full stop after the project name. So with that, you'll see it will only create one folder named go. Then I have all my files within it. Then I have this manage.py. So manage.py is our main file. So these are entry points. The same way, let's say if you're building anything related to HTML, we'll have index.html as our entry point. So this manage.py is our entry point. So this technically it's what runs the entire application. So really not get into the specific things that it does, but because you'll rarely edit this file. So not unless you really have to do something extraordinary per se, but you really have will not have to edit this file. So in most scenarios, this file won't be touched in any way. So I leave that as it is. Then coming to in our core folder, we have init.py. So for those who interacted with Python, you know that anything that has two hyphens init.py, technically what it does, it's trying to tell Python that treat these as a package, or rather treat these, let's say, just treat it as a package. So we'll be able to treat this entire core file, or this entire core folder as a package. sgi.py is used whenever we want to deploy our applications. So if we want to deploy maybe in servers that run Apache, so we'll have to configure the server settings in our SGI. We have settings.py, which from the name settings, it holds all our settings for our project. So for this also, I won't really get so much into it, though we'll have to edit one or two things here. So whenever you're editing, I'll try to explain why we're doing that. But technically, it has all the settings that we need. So you can see we have databases, we have password validators, we have some middleware, we have middleware here, we have templates, so we can define where the templates are. We have the language time zone, we have static URL. So static URL for things to do with CSS, JS, images. We have allowed host, we have debug, then we have the secret key. Technically, also we have install app. So technically, these are just settings that we need in order to run our application. We have urls.py from the name URLs. So here we define our endpoints, or rather our routes. So we also do some edits here. Then we have wsgi.py, same as SGI. It's used whenever you're deploying the application. Then after that, we have the manage.py, which I talked about. So what you're going to do now, we have our core project. We can choose to work, or rather to build an application within the core. Though it's a good practice to always have a project folder. Then whenever you want to build things within it, you have specific applications for that. It will help you organize your code much better. So for that, I'll create a new app within the project. So for that, there are two ways to do it. So now we start now using this manage.py file. So I'll write py manage.py start app. Then so someone is asking if they're able to get the recordings of this session. Probably not, because I don't think.
Yes.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
I'll send the link later in the group.
Okay, so just to continue, is there are two ways when we want to start a new application. So the first bit is we start using now the manage.py file. So I'll write my py manage.py start app, then I'll be able to give the name of the app. So in this case, you're going to create, or I didn't mention this, I think you're going to create a to-do API, because a to-do has all the functionality that you need. We have the create functionality, we have the read, we have the update, and we have the delete. So that's what we're going to build. So for this, I'll say py manage.py start app to do. So it will create a new folder. Then within the new folder, we have similar things to whatever we had in core, but with new additions. So you'll see we have a migrations file. You'll see we have admin.py file, apps.py, models, test, views. So init.py, as I said, it just tells Python that treat this as a package. Admin.py, from the name admin. So technically, whatever you want it to appear at the admin panel, you want it to appear at the admin panel, we'll have to configure it here in the admin.py file. So for those who don't know, Django by default, it gives you admin panel by default. So I'll show you that in a bit. So anything that we want it to appear there, we'll have to configure it here. Apps.py, it just tells that since this is an app, you can be able to specify things related to that app. So you can see it has the name of the app. So technically, it just configures the name of the app. So whenever we want to call the app, let's say if you have several applications within our project, we can be able to refer to each application by their name. We have models.py. So models.py, for those people who have done machine learning, tend to confuse this word. They think model is that structure that you build that can be able to do predictions or something of the sort. But in this case, models, it's where we specify our schema, rather where we specify our tables. So Django uses the MVT structure. So the common one is MVC, which is models, views, and controllers. So with Django, it uses MVT, which is models, controllers, templates. So the approach is similar to all those MVC structure, but in this case, just the templates bit that has been introduced. But technically, whatever we have is similar to the MVC structure. So for the models, we specify our tables. Then for tests, in case we want to run any test, we'll have to write our test within the test.py file. Then we have views.py. So views is where we write our logic. So for the MVC structure, probably controllers, it will be the same thing as controllers. So for the views, we write now our logic. So let's say a user opens a particular page, or rather navigates to a particular route. What do you want to show to that? What do you want to display, or rather what do we want the user to see? So that's what we'll specify in our views.py. So I think that's all as far as an app is concerned. So I told you there are two ways to run an app. So the first thing is py-manage.py startup to do. So the second way, I might choose to go back to the Django admin way. And I'll just write Django admin start app, then let's say to do to-dos. Also do the same thing. You'll create an app with the same file structure as whatever we had in to do. So I'll just delete this so that we continue with this. Yeah. So now that we have this, we really have our application in place. Then we have our project in place. So the next thing that we really need to do is we now need to specify our tables, or rather what, our tables. So that will do it in our models.py. So for a to-do app, so I'll create a class. So be using some bits of object-oriented here. So I'll create a class. So with this class, I'll name it to do item probably, which will borrow from the models.model. So models, it has been imported here. So from Django.db, we import models. Then within the models, you're interested in the model function, or rather the model method. So that's what you're calling here. So then after that, now we specify whatever we need. So in this case, we'll have the content, so which is the content of what to do. So I'll have models.text field. So text field, these are types that you use. So sure, some of you might have interacted with it. So there are several. So there's text field, there's character field, there's integer, there is foreign key, and such. So in our case, this will be a text field. Then after having that, we have a Boolean of either completed or not, because technically you're building a to-do. So for to-do, you need to have to mark it as completed or not. So we have that. So someone is asking us that to complete version. It's GitHub Copilot. Then after that, probably I'll have created. So the day that it was created. So what will I say? The type will be date time field. So because we want to capture the date and we want to capture the time that the to-do was created. Then we have this auto now add true. So what this does is it will be able to give it a proper timestamp of when it was created. So we really don't have to specify, or rather in our input fields, we really won't have to have this created input, so that you can have to manually type the created time. So by default, whenever it's saving, it will save with the current timestamp. So this is what auto now add true means. So there's another, it is auto now true. So the difference between these two is auto now true, auto now add true will be able to, whenever you're creating a new instance of that. So let's say you're creating a to-do item, auto now add true will act whenever you're doing the creation. When you have auto now true, that will be able to update whenever you're doing an update. So let's say if our things get created and updated by, for updated we'll have auto now, so that whenever we are doing an update, it will pick the current timestamp. But this, it will only pick the current timestamp of when it was created. Then apart from created, I don't think we need updated. I think for now we can work with that. And I'll specify, so this dev define a string. So technically we are saying that whenever we create a to-do item, whatever we want to return to the user to be able to see is this content. So I'll comment this in a bit so that you can see the difference and know clearly what I'm trying to mean here. Then, yeah, I think as far as the to-do item is concerned, this is all we need. So I'll just save that file. Then, so after saving it, we have to make a migration so that we can be able to commit this now to the database. But first, before we do that, we had introduced, we had created the project, but we didn't run the migrations initially. So as I told you before that Django comes with the admin panel. So for it to be able to showcase that admin panel, we need to make migrations so that it can pick all those settings that Django comes with, then try to push them to a DB. So by default, if you see, these are the only files that we have. I'll just open settings.py, scroll down to our databases. You can see the name of the database is DB SQLite3. So in this case, you're using SQLite3 by default. Well, that's what Django uses by default. Though you can have your own database that you wish. So maybe be it Postgres, be it MySQL Server, be it whatever that you choose. you can be able to specify it here, but by default, it comes, it uses SQLite3. So I'll run this command so that you see what happens. So py-manage.py, then I'll run migrate. You'll see it will create the database here. So you can see to say applying content types, initial 0, okay, update proxy permissions, alter user, blah blah blah. So these are the migrations that it has done. So it has pushed all these to our DB. So we want now to interact with the DB so that we see what the DB has, and so that you can also be able to see what the Django admin panel has. So for that, we'll have to create a super user, because we technically can't access the admin panel without a password, or rather a password or an email. So for that, we'll create a super user. So I'll run the same command, py-manage.py, then I'll have create super user as one word. When I execute that, it will ask me for the username. So I'll have the username as admin. I'll skip email address. Password I'll have is as admin. I'll type my password again. Well, I'll just keep the checks. So for that, we already have our super user created. So to run the server now, we're going to write py-manage.py run server. So it by default to run on port 8000. So I'll just open that. So this is what it runs. So it will say the install worked successfully, congratulations, blah blah blah. So I can choose to pass /admin to bring us to this page where we're supposed to log in. So I'll log the credentials I just created. This is what we have. So you can see straight out of the box, we already have this admin panel. So I can be able to come to users. I can see the user I just created. I can choose to update either the first name, all this. I can choose to update that. I can choose to add a user. Yeah, so you can see how working with Django is simple. Because for other languages, I believe you'll have to build your admin panel from scratch, but this comes already pre-installed with it. So having this, so what I want to do now, actually looking at this, let me just go back to this. Looking at this, you can see these are the only tables that we have as per now. So we only have groups and users. And authentication and authorization, this is the app. So Django on its backend, it has this app that handles authentication and authorization. Then within the app now, it has these two tables, groups and users. So what I'll do is I'll come back to models. So it saved it. So I'll come to core settings. Then I'll come to installed apps. I'll have the name of the app. So in my case, I had to do. The name of the app that we created is to do. So why am I adding it in installed apps? I'm adding it in installed apps so that whenever I'm running manage.py, Django will be able to know that there's an app that was created named to do, and you can consume anything from to do that you want. So anything that I've specified in to do can be able to be accessed at a project level. So that's why we are having this to do here. So I'll just save it. Then after saving it, I'll stop the server. Then I want to make migrations now. So making migrations, I want all these that I have to be committed. So that's why I'm making migrations. So there are two commands that you really have to know. There's make migrations, then there's migrate. So from the word make migrations, you're making the migrations. Then migrate now, you're migrating those migrations that you made now to go and sit in the DB, or rather you're pushing them now to the DB. So those are that's the difference. So I'll make migrations. You'll see that it has created a migration called 001 initial.py, and what it has done, it has created model to do item, which is this. So I'll come to do app, open migrations, open the folder, open the file rather that it has created. Can be able to see it has been generated by Django, blah, blah, blah. Then we have a class migrations, initial true dependencies, it has no dependencies. Then you can see that it's create model, names to do item. Then we have the fields that it will create. So after having that, now what you can do next is we'll run the migrate command. So by migrate now, it will push those changes to the database. So I'll just run the server, come to admin panel, refresh, but still we won't be able to see it. So now that's where now this admin.py file comes in, because I told you initially that here we are specifying anything that we need it to appear in the admin panel. So from .models, I'll import to do item. So this is the model that we created, the name is to do item. So I'll just import that. And after importing, I'll write admin.site.register to do item. So the same name that we used here, I'll register it. So I'm registering it to the admin panel. So I'll save that, come back to the admin panel, refresh, and now we'll be able to see the table here. So the class is to do, the table name is to do items. So by default, it will pluralize the table name. So if I open to do items, I can choose to add. You can see I have content and I have completed. That other field that I specified, it already created won't be available here because that it will be doing, rather it will be writing to the created on its own whenever it's saving. So we won't be able to see that. So yeah, we can add, we can save. So look what has happened here. It has said the to-do item, df was added successfully because df was the name of the content. So I want you to see what happens when I comment this out. We'll come back, add to-do item. If you can see, it has said the to-do item object 2 was added successfully. So when you're having multiple objects, you really want to know what object 2 is, or rather what object 1 is. Then here also, you'll see that it has changed the naming convention. So it will now show you the in terms of objects, of which it's not a good design way. So what you need to do is we specify whatever we want it to be displayed, of which in our case, we want it to display the content, which is that. So if I save that, come back and refresh, to be able now to have this accordingly. So up to there, so I've handled the models and the admin. So what you're going to do next is actually before I start getting now into the logic bit, I'll be able to take questions if there's anything up to where I've explained that one has not understood. So I'll be able to take questions regarding to where I've reached. Oh, so there's a question that was asked: if views are controllers in MVC, what are views in Django? I think that's the question. So for the MVC structure, we have models, we have views, we have controllers, of which for views is what the user will be able to see. The controllers will control the logic, then the models will have the tables or the schema. But in Django, there's MVT. So we have the models, we have the views. So the views now will control the logic. So the views is controllers in MVC. Then we have the templates. Now the templates is the views in MVC. So I'm hoping I've answered the question. Okay, so if there's no question, so I'll continue. Okay, DeVries, can see your can ask the question.
Yes, hi Billy.
Hi.
Okay, so we're trying to get into Python from another language background. So there's this issue of when you create a new Python environment as you have created, where on this file structure do we like have all dependencies that are related to this project alone, so that in case you need to share it to somebody else, like where on this project will he know that these are the modules that he needs to import to his project? I don't know if my question is clear.
Yeah, I think I've understood the question. So what happens is pip, so for those maybe who've interacted with the npm and such, so pip works the same way. So in our case, what I've installed in my virtual environment is Django and Django REST framework. So if I want to share this project now to another person, so what I do is I'll come and write pip freeze this sign, the greater than sign, then I'll have requirements.txt. So requirements.txt is the file that I want to save. Then I'm freezing all the dependencies, or rather all the libraries that I've used. So if I run that, it will create a requirements.txt file to be able to list all the packages that this project depends on. So whenever we are sharing this, they'll be able to see all the packages that you're using with their exact versions, so they can be able to install from this. So I'm hoping that answers your question.
Yep, it does. Thank you for that. And so if they get to reach the requirements.txt and see each and every module that is required, now do they get to install them one by one, or there's a command that they can install everything that is in that file?
Yeah, there's a command. So in this case, I'll write pip install -r for read, then I'll just pass in the name of the file. So in my case, requirements.txt. Executing this will install all the packages. So you can see requirement already satisfied, blah, because I have them installed. So running this command will be able to install all the dependencies within the requirements.txt file. That's okay?
Yeah, sure, thanks.
Okay, so Lala, I'm seeing you have your hand raised.
Okay, so good evening, Billy.
Good evening.
So I can see from your screen we have models, and I want to believe that those are, for example, the tables, right?
Yeah.
So far I think we have created a to-do item as a table. So when we want to add maybe a different table, we'll just add it on the same model, then we migrate.
Yeah. So if it's something related to the to-do per se, so we'll have to create it just within the same models, then we'll migrate.
And if it is not something related, we'll make the migration.
Not really specifically, because if I say, let's say in this to-do item, in this to-do app, can just do an example. So probably I want to add to-do category per se, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
So for this, let me just remove this item, so just have the name, probably and the created. So I have now these two tables, to-do item and to-do category. So I'll save that. So anytime you're making migrations, or rather anytime you make a change to your models.py file, one thing you have to note, you have to make migrations. So that's one thing that you really have to know. So after we've created the to-do category, so the next thing you're going to do is you'll run the migrations. So you'll see it has created another file. 002, then create to-do category. So if we open that file, you can see the same procedure as whatever was in initially. So it will have the to-do category, the fields that it will create. Then after that, the next thing that we do is we'll run the migrate. Running the migrate, we'll come back to admin.py, import that, then register it.
Okay, and just a quick one actually, because I'm also looking at it maybe on Laravel perspective. For example, we've migrated those models or those tables. Now, what about if I want to add, for example, just to go back to the models? Yeah, what about if I want to add maybe a different column after maybe created? Will I need to make migration afresh, or I'll just migrate?
You'll have to make migrations again.
Okay. Then you'll add the specific column and you'll retain the data which were there initially. Okay.
Okay, so we'll proceed. So I'm seeing that so I'll try to speed things up a little bit. So get rid of this because we won't need it anymore. Then after having that, so we'll come to admin.py, remove that, then remove this. And I'll make migrations again so that it can delete that file. Or it can delete that table. Then migrate, and I'll run my server. So coming here, it won't be there. So now what I need to do now, we now need to introduce now the REST framework nature now. This. So we have the table already. So we want to be able now to have an API that can be able to update to that table. So what you're going to do is I'll create a new file within the to-do application. So the new file, I'll name it serializers.py. So what serializers does is it will be able now to serialize whatever Django that will be, whatever output Django will be able to give us. Because for those of you who write Django, when we query any information from the database, Django will return it in form of a query set. And as I told you before that for an API to be able to be accessed by, let's say, almost any service, it needs to return the data in JSON. And also it will be able to accept now data coming into it in form of JSON. So when we serve the data in form of a query set, it really, because not every maybe let's say maybe front-end framework will be able to read the query set as it is in Django. So for that, we have to convert that query set into a JSON format. Then now we serve that. So for serializers, so I'll import. So actually before that, there's something that I missed. So on settings.py, I'll come here and add the REST framework that we just installed so that we can be able now to consume all features that REST framework offers. And here, so I come from REST framework, import serializers. Then I create a class. So in my case, we have to do items. So I name it to do item serializer. Let me just go with that, and then I'll get rid of this for now. I'll also get rid of this for now. So I'll create a class to do serializer. So it borrows from serializers, which you just imported, then you pick the serializer method or function within it. So just to go the easier way, so I'll create another class, call it meta. Then I can be able to specify the model that it's going to use. So the model is to do item. I'll import that from models. Then for the fields, I can also choose to omit that, then have have that so that it can pick all the can I say all the fields. So instead of specifically specifying the fields, can just pass that. But in a situation whereby you want specific fields to be exposed to the user, you have to specify those fields here. Then read-only fields probably also get rid of that. So technically having this now will be able to convert whatever we get as a query set into JSON. Then I'll come to my views. So the first thing, I'll import my model. So from .models import to do item. And I'll also import this. So view sets. So REST framework also offers something called view sets. So what are view sets? So as the description says, view sets are essentially just a type of class-based views that doesn't provide any method handlers such as get, post, etc., but instead does actions such as list, retrieve, create, etc. As I said initially, we're interested in the CRUD operations. View sets will be able to give us all that. So that's what we're going to use. So I'll do that, and then I'll import my serializer, which I just created. So from .serializer, import to do item serializer. Then after that, I'll create now the logic that I want it to do. So I'll create a class called to do view set. So it will borrow from these view sets that we imported. Then I'll call the model view set because you're using a model to get the data from. So after that, I love this. So for the query set, now it's whatever we are requesting, or rather we are calling the. We want data that we let's say for instance, we have a table to do items. So the query set is we want to display all the items from to do. So we'll have the model name, which is to do item, then .objects.all. So in this, we are saying that we want all the objects that are in to do item. Then we are calling the serializer class, which we created. So after we've gotten the items, or rather the query set from the DB, we save it as a variable query set. We need now to pass this to our serializer so that it can be able to convert that query set into a JSON format. So this is all we need to do. So with this, as you can see, these are 2 lines. We have another 3 lines here. So with 5 lines, can be able to achieve whatever we want. So I'll just save that. Then in the to-do also, I'll create a new file. So this file, I'll name it urls.py. So I told you initially, from what we had in core, URLs specifies the routes. So here I'll import from, not always quite sure of that, so I'll just have to confirm here. So yeah, from Django URLs, I'll import path. Then I'll import the view that we created. So from .views, I'll import the to-do item view set, so which you just created. So the logic of whatever we want it to happen. Then from REST framework routers, I'll import default router. So there's so many ways that you can choose to display or rather to handle your, how can I say, your API, your creation of the API. So the easiest way to do it is by using the routers, which REST framework offers. So I'll just show you in a bit how the routers work. So for the router, I'll create a new variable router, name it default router. Then I'll do a register. So I'll remove this so that we have to-dos. So to-dos, this is the endpoint. So whenever we want to access the to-dos, we'll have to call this endpoint, which we have specified here. Then I'll pass in the to-do view set, which is from the views. Then the base name, I'll have it as to-do. Then after having that, I'll create URL patterns. Then I'll just call whatever router that we have here, then URL that comes from the router. So routers, so when I hover on routers, you'll say that routers provide a convenient and consistent way of automatically determining the URL configuration for your API. They're used by simply instantiating a router class and then registering all the required view sets in that router. So router is the most easiest way to build the API because the routers technically it will do everything for you. So after having this, so I'll just save that. Then I'll go back to my core, the urls.py. So here I'll add include. Then I'll introduce, so for those, so you can see that we have by default, there's this admin.py. So this is which enable us to navigate to the admin panel. So it comes with the root already specified. So I'll just add another path. And that path, I will include the to-do URLs. So I'll just close this. So the to-do URLs is this. So we have the name of the app, which is to do. Then we have the file URL. So that's what you're including here. So I'll just save that. Then there's an error with settings.py. Just add a comma here. Able to load. Now, having that, I'll come back to my browser again. So the route URL is 8,000, and then I'll add to-dos. So this is what we have. So you can see we have Django REST framework. We'll have to-dos. So for now, it shows we have 2 items in our to-do. But in some reasons, it's not displaying the exact data that you want, that is rather in those to-do items. So how we are going to handle that is there's something that we missed in our views. So I'll go back to the views. So specify to do objects at all. Actually, that's okay. So probably in serializers. So serializers. Serializers also seems okay because we specified we need all the fields from the to-do item. So probably what I can do now, I think the issue. See. URLs. URLs also seems okay. So probably I'll have to change the structure. By default, I think that's supposed to work. But let me just change to what we have here so that you can see if that was the issue. So I'll have this format instead. So I'll import that, include to come back, refresh. So I'll try to use this to test the PIOL. So just to be sure it's really happening. So start get request. So for some reason it's not passing the content itself. That's okay. That's also okay. So probably what I'm going to try to do is specify what field I want here. So try having that. It's kind of weird. So what I'm going to do is create a function that can get to do view instead. So to do items, so then instead of render, so that I be sure. So I call JSON response, which I import from Django to do that. Having that, I'll create a URL for that. So path. Then maybe I'll say get to do's. So for that, put view. So do get to do's. Try that. Get to do's. JSON response. Else get to do's. Oh, so we have that. So it's saying to do items is something variable. So what I'll do is to do items. So I'll have say .json response. Probably just have a response. Import that. From that, so response. Purchase of Django HTTP. Okay, from this framework. So here. Response. Let's get an expected save. Don't need that. Bit weird, Molina and Akata show those, but probably let me try to edit. So I'll just come to here. But let me try. Actually, this seems okay. So we need to just confirm what the error might be. Yeah, so actually here's the problem. So it's supposed to be model serializer, not serializer, because we are using the model to populate the data. So, yeah, so I think that should get it done. Yeah, so with that, I should be able to have a proper output. So I'll just go back to the browser, try refresh this. Yeah, so you can be able to see the records here. So I can choose to add the record from this. Probably the best approach is probably just use this. So this is an alternative to Postman for those who interacted with Postman. So whenever I want to create a new record, so I'll just come to post, since post is the one being used to create. So I'll create a JSON object. So content is the new content. So comma, and then I'll have just for uniformity, I'll just use double quotes for everything. And I'll have completed. So this probably be false. So I'll send a request. So this is the feedback that I'm getting back. So you'll see it says 201, which means it was created. So to have this, then you'll have the date. So if I come back to the admin panel, then refresh the to-do items, you'll see that this has been added. So so for that, you can be able that the create functionality is working. The list functionality is also working. So if you change to get, we'll be able to list all these. So the list functionality. So we have create, read, update, and delete. So create works, read works. So update. So probably I'll come to do's. I'll give 1. So by 1 meaning I'll choose this ID of 1. So the content is DFDF, so I want to change that. So I'll say this is the new content edited. So for that, I'll have a put. So by put, it says that you'll be able to update. So I want to update this record only. So I'll send that. So try and see what this error is. Introduce. So I'm not sure if I'm supposed to include, so I'm supposed to add the, do you call the slash after it? So you can see it is, let's say 200. Okay, this is the new content edited. So if I try now to get all the to-dos, if I send, you can see ID1 has been updated. So update works. So for delete, I'll just pass again 1, then come to get, choose delete, then execute. So it will return no content because it has deleted. So try get again, send. So you can see we don't have ID1, so we only have 2 and 3, meaning it has deleted 1. So simple as that. That's how we can create a simple REST API. So with this, it's scalable because whatever you need to do is you just come add your tables, add the serializer and such. Then by default, Django can be able to handle quite a number. So it can be able to give you a proper API that can be consumed by a lot of people. So you can see by simple, let's say very few code of lines, we can be able to achieve, to create a CRUD operation, or the CRUD API that works. So the secret is the routers. We come to URLs. So the secret is this router. So with the router, it can be able to give you all the CRUD functionalities. So you can choose to update, or rather, let's say if you come to views and then you say that you really don't want to use the default that routers give you. So you can choose to create a function. So let's say maybe create. So then whatever happens whenever you're creating, let's say if at all for the content, you want it maybe to come in a particular format, let's say, you can be able to override whatever the view set does. So you can be able to override if it's a create, you can be able to do that. If it's an update, if it's a list, you can be able to specify your specific things within these functions so that you can override whatever happens in the view set. So that's how simple it is to create a REST framework. So I'm seeing time is not our side. I wanted to now go to a project, a UI project, so specifically Angular, then show you how you can connect that to this API. But I'm seeing time is not on our side, so probably we have to if your lead will agree to that, probably you have to schedule another session some other time so that we continue on this, so that I can show you all the methods that you can choose to use. For this, we've only used routers, which is the most straightforward and the easiest way to do it. So you can choose to do other things, then try to tweak this API to do specific things that you want, then connect it to a front end and see how it works. So probably if we get enough time, probably we'll connect it to a web framework, to a web front end. Then we'll also connect it to a mobile application, a mobile app, that is, so that you can be able to see how having a REST API is beneficial in both ways. So up to there, I'll take any questions if there is. Okay, Davies, you can continue.
Okay, so I was aware a bit. I missed the concept of serializers, but I got it when you are proceeding with it. So just a minor question. You talked of you can control whatever you need to be passed to the. If you could go to the serializers on your screen. Yep. So where we have the fields, you say that you can either decide to use the all stuff whereby you just specify that you need everything that is coming from that model. And now for cases like we have a model that has a lot of fields, but now you need all those fields with an exception of some. So for the case of maybe a user who has a lot of fields, but you need all the other fields without the password of it. So will you specify all the other fields? There's a way that you can just say that we don't need this field. We need all other ones except this one.
So probably I'll use an example of this. So for now, if we try to get, you can see, you'll be able to see, let me just call the get, be able to see ID, content, completed, and created. So if I come to serializer and choose now, I don't want created, I don't want ID. If I save that, then come and call, you'll see I only have content and completed. So that's how you can choose whatever field that you want. So if at all you didn't want to show the password, you'll just specify all the fields, then don't specify password.
So there's no like a way whereby we can just specify that you don't need this, then we need all the others. You just have to put them one after the other, with an exception of that you don't want.
Yeah, for now I think I haven't gone deep to see if there's an exclude. Though in how do I say, there's scenarios whereby you can choose to exclude, or exclude comes in handy. Though for the serializers, I really haven't dug deep to see if there's an exclude feature. Though yeah, probably something that I'll try and check it out. All that I've always used is just specifying the fields. Though I'm sure there is.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Then another question. When we use the routes whereby you say they provide by default all the 4 HTTP methods. So is there a way that we can override to like change whatever the user is getting, like instead of when the listing, instead of just getting the, let me just call it the list of all the items that are there, we need like a dictionary or an object that has a message, then the list down there. Is there a way that when you use the routes, we can control whatever we are sending back as a response?
So for that, there isn't, you can't really do much when you're using so probably what you have to do is you'll create a custom function. So let's say something like this. Then for this, you'll be able to specify. So if at all maybe you want to show error messages, then there's also another object maybe with the name data that you want to contain all the data. So for that, you'll have to specify your own function that can do that. But if at all you're using the model vset, it can be able to actually for this can be able to override whatever happens. So let's say for the list we have something of the sort. Though a proper way to do it is probably just have a function. So because get it for specific things, you might need specific or rather tailored response that you want. So for that, you can do a function on its own. Though you can choose to also to override this list, but for this it will work on almost for this actually it will, for everything that calls the to-do item with a get request, it will have the response or rather the structure that we specified. But with having a custom made function, can be able to choose which one will show the custom response And for everything else, you can be able to show the specified or rather the default response. So that's how you can do it. Have a custom method or override whatever view set provides.
Yeah, sure, understood.
Okay, so I'm seeing Pasaka is asking, how do you send requests to another remote API from the server? Not quite sure if I'm understanding the question quite well. How do you send request to another remote API on the remote server? Probably you can unmute yourself and expand on the question well. Yeah, Pasaka.
My question is, for example, let's say you need some data from another API. Let's say you're a weather app, right? You want to get some weather details from a remote API, and then come modify the data in the server and serve it back to the client with the required details. Now, how do you do that in Django?
So for that, I can say it's not specific to how you do it in Django, but how you did it in any framework or any language. So let's say in this to do, we want to get data from another way. So for that, a proper way, you just have to define the logic within your functions or rather within your classes. So let's say we have, maybe I can create a URL, then maybe have here the URL of the endpoint that I want to get data from. Then probably I can be able to now send a response, maybe response, then I can be able to get whatever is in that URL. Then based on the response, now I can be able now to tweak whatever response I get back. So it's not specific to how you did Django, but how you did it in any other framework or language. So you just write the logic that can be able to get the data from the endpoint. Then once you have the data, you can be able now to modify the data as you want. So all that happens within your views file because that's where all the logic sits. Collins Taker. First, Pasaka, I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
Collins.
Hi, mini fresha na I had a question. Unaweza kuwa as in naweza fanya backend engineering bila kuwa na skills na knowledge za frontend engineering. Juu leo nimekuwa lesson we na sijaona kitu, so nilikuwa nataka guidance from Billy. Alafu pia nilitaka Billy pia unipatie some guidance ndio venye naweza kureach nipatie more knowledge juu nilikuwa nataka kufanya backend engineering. Yeah. That is it.
Okay, so for that, I'd say, yeah, you can be able to be a backend engineer without having any front-end skills. So it just depends. So yeah, it's possible. You can be a backend engineer without front-end skills. You can be a front-end engineer without backend skills. So so it all depends on how you want it. So though I'd advise, as much as you want to be a backend engineer, it's advisable you have a small touch of how front-end works so that you can be able to configure your backend accordingly. So I think that answers the question. Getting to me or rather reaching me, I think.
Yeah. Also. Yeah, Billy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, I can. Kate, you're saying something.
No, continue.
Oh, okay. So I've heard the fresher guy. So yeah, it's true as Billy has stated earlier. You can be backend engineer with that knowledge in front end. So you can also hit me up because I can see you also called Taker. I'm Taker also. So yeah, you can reach out also to me.
Okay, so I think that's sorted. So if you need any guidance also, if you have any question also, you can be able just to ask in the group because there are so many experienced other software guys there. So yeah, that's how you learn. So you can ask any question whenever you're stuck, you'll be able to get answered. So DevRees, see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, sure. So just trying to share a bit of whatever the guy has asked. So according to me, I think being a front-end engineer without back-end knowledge is very possible, because in the analogy of the hotel thing that you were explaining earlier, if you're a customer, you don't need to know exactly whatever is happening at the kitchen there, but whoever is in the kitchen should in any way have knowledge of what happens on the reception part of it. So as a backend engineer, you should at least have some concepts on how the front end works. As a front end engineer, sometimes you don't need to understand what happens on the back end. But for the backend guy, it's like it's a central point. So you have to understand exactly what's needed from the front end side and how your data is going to be handled on the front end side, so that you provide the right data for the front end guys, that is. So in one way or another, you'll just need to at least understand something about the basic, at the basic level, how forms operate on the front end.
Okay, so thanks for that, DevRees. So Pasaka.
Yeah, okay, so nilikuwa na swali na kambi nimesahau, but okay, I have the second one. Maybe nikikumbuka nitauliza tena. I've seen like Django comes with a lot of I don't think pre-built, but pre-configurations that some other frameworks doesn't, like Flask. And for me, for Ktor, it's basically the engine. So all the configuration, or what you want, you just configure it, and what you don't, you just don't. Is there a way during installation of Django you can maybe configure what you want? For example, if I don't need templates in my server, I just don't have them at all in my project.
So I'd say yes or no. It depends. Though for Django, whenever you have, yes, it will give you the basic stuff that you need. It won't give you extra stuff that you have to get rid of. Because whatever it will give you the basic configuration. As much as it will be able to give you that bin panel and such, I can say that's a basic configuration, because that's technical what you need. But for templates, it doesn't give you, so you have to specify your own templates. For static files, it doesn't give you. So what it does, it just gives you the basic that will be able to get Django running. So I can say it's not that much of junk. It's something that can help you. So I really not want to have to specify to omit some of the things that it already comes with. So yeah, but I don't think there's that provision whereby you can choose to get rid of some of the things. I think after it has generated, you can choose to get rid of things that you don't want yourselves. But it's not something that it's worth doing, because it gives you the basic thing that Django needs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm seeing Keima Linji. So I'll start with you.
Okay, so I have a question pertaining API security. For example, you would want to maybe protect your API using something like JWT, yeah? And you'd want, ideally, anyone who's accessing your server to provide, you provide them a token, and they use this token to be able to access the data on your API. So what would be the best way to go about that? How would you implement that in such a way where it is the most secure it can be?
So first thing, in terms of security, so by default, Django REST framework has a cause policy. So if there was a front-end service that was supposed to hit this endpoint as per now, it won't get access to it because by default it specifies the cause. So for that, if at all I want specific services to hit it, I'll have to manually whitelist their endpoints, or rather have an option whereby I make this API publicly accessible. So meaning any endpoint can be able to hit it. So that's the first bit of security that comes in. So then the second bit, if I want to use, let's say, tokens. So we can be able to have, let's say, here in to-do, there's something called permission classes. So I can be able to specify the permission classes. So maybe, let's say, I can have allow any, maybe I can have, say, maybe is authenticated. So these are some of the permission that you can use. So let's say if I choose to have permissions is authenticated, this means that for anyone to hit this endpoint, they must be authenticated within the system. So how I'll handle authentication is when I introduce now the bit of token. So there's several frameworks that you can use several libraries rather that you can use to do that. But it's something that you have to implement. Django doesn't come with it pre-configured, so it's something that you have to implement so that you can be able. But what it comes with is this authenticated bit. Because either way, if you get the token, you'll have to get the token, send the token to the server. The server confirms if it's the one that generated the token. Then if it confirms that, now it authenticates you. So after it authenticates you, now Django will be able to pick up from there. So is the user authenticated? Yes. Now serving with the information that you want. If not, it will deny you the access. So that's how you can do it using. Can implement the logic using custom libraries that are readily available. So I think that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll go to Mulwa, Joseph.
I had a question. Yeah, I had initially started a backend project using MongoDB. So, but it was a little bit hard. So my question was, what's your comparison between MongoDB and Django?
So for that, there's no comparison in that because MongoDB it's a database. Django it's a backend engine, rather backend framework. So there isn't so much to compare that because they're totally two different things. So what I'll compare MongoDB to is this SQLite DB that we have here. So these are database, MongoDB is a database. So Mongo is a, how can I say it, is a non-relational DB. So meaning it will save things in form of documents, of which as per now, I'd say that's a way to DB. It's much efficient than using the relational databases, but also it's self-preference. So maybe if you're handling big data, it might give you, or rather convince you not database to use. So it really depends on what data you're trying to consume, or rather what data you're trying to save. That's what will inform your decision, whether to go with relational database or non-relational database. Yeah, so as I get to you're a beginner, so MongoDB doesn't compare with Django. You can use MongoDB within Django, though there is no direct comparison for that. Does that answer you?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Pasaka?
Okay, so yeah, I've seen Python is SQLite 3. Is that real the normal SQL we know, or maybe there's some difference between those two?
So as you might already have seen, for other databases, you really won't have a file. So SQLite 3 is a file database as per se. So this comes in handy. So for those who are doing mobile development, this will come in handy because it will save the database as a file. So you won't have to be trying to query things from a server elsewhere. So it will just be within your project structure. So it's a file database that you can use if you're building big applications. SQLite 3 you can use for saving things like to do with settings. these small configurations that you needed to be accessed much faster. So that's where SQLite comes in. So it's a file database. It's not the normal SQL, rather Postgres that you know.
Okay, so basically SQLite 3 can use it for caching.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you want to use it for caching, I'd say you can use it, but why go for SQLite 3 for caching? And there are better alternatives there. So
Redis.
yeah.
Okay, I think.
Okay, so I take there is no other question. So if there's no, I'll hand it back to Kate. So it's been a pleasure having to share my knowledge with you. So I'm hoping we'll interact in other more sessions. So thank you.
Thank you, Billy. I'll pass it to Dan. My co-host, Daniel.
Yes, Kate. Great appreciations to Billy for taking us through this session. There's been much to learn concerning the Django framework. I've seen that there are many freshers amongst us, but I really appreciate the effort that you've shown by asking questions. Atakama, it has been challenging for you guys. So my advice would be that try to reach out to people, ask for advice on how to proceed, on where to begin, ask for a roadmap on how you can proceed either in front end or back end, so that at least you get a foothold of where you want to start in this development journey. But I really appreciate you guys for participating, for asking questions. The likes of Pasaka, Keima, DeVries, Kina Collins. Yeah, that kind of collaboration is what we want, so that at least we can learn and share the little knowledge that we have. And also, someone, I don't know if Rachel is in the meeting. Someone is asking for the link to the YouTube channel. If you can share, so that people can go there and have a look at what we've been discussing so far. Is Rachel around? Rachel?
Yes, she's around.
Okay, she'll share the link so that people can go there and view what we've been sharing. So I don't think there's still much to discuss here. Thanks to Billy once more for sharing with us. The session has taken longer than expected, but at least I think it was worth it. We've learned a lot, and I hope to see you guys in the next sessions. So much appreciations to you, and have a good night.